The late Alexander, Earl of Englandtone, who loved wit more than wine, and men of genius more than sycophants, had a great admiration of Johnson, but from the remarkable elegance of his own manners was, perhaps, too delicately sensible of the roughness which sometimes appeared in Johnson's behaviour. One evening, about this time, when his lordship did me the honour to sup at my lodgings with Dr. Robertson and several other men of literary distinction, he regretted that Johnson had not been educated with more refinement and lived more in polished society. "No, no, my lord," said Signor Baretti. "Do with him what you would, he would always have been a bear." "True," answered the Earl with a smile, "but he would have been a dancing bear." To obviate all the reflections which had been gone round the world to Johnson's prejudice, by applying to him the epithet of a bear, let me impress upon my readers a just and happy saying of my friend Goldsmith, who knew him well. "Johnson, to be sure, has a roughness in his manner, but no man alive has a more tender heart. He has nothing of the bear but his skin." 1769. When Johnson was age 60, we are now at. I should have read a little bit more yesterday. I didn't know it was that close to 1769. Oh well. In 1769, so far as I can discover, the public was favoured with nothing of Johnson's composition, either for himself or any of his friends. His meditations, too, strongly proved that he suffered much both in body and mind. Yet was he perpetually striving against evil, and nobly endeavouring to advance his intellectual and devotional improvement. Every generous and grateful heart must feel for the distresses of so eminent a benefactor to mankind, and now that his unhappiness is certainly known, must respect that dignity of character which prevented him from complaining. His Majesty having the preceding year instituted the Royal Academy of Arts in London, Johnson had now the honour of being appointed Professor in Ancient Literature, in which place he had been succeeded by Bennet Langton, Esquire. When that truly religious gentleman was elected to the honorary professorship at the same time that Edward Gibbon, Esquire, noted for introducing a kind of sneering infidelity into his historical writings, was elected Professor in Ancient History, in the room of Dr. Goldsmith, I observed that it brought to my mind wicked Will Whiston and good Mr. Diddon. I am now also of that admirable institution as Secretary for Foreign Correspondence, by the favour of the academicians and the approbation of the sovereign. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. When Johnson was made Professor of Ancient Literature, in the course of the year he wrote some letters to Mrs. Thrale, passed some part of the summer at Oxford and at Lichfield. Oh, is that one of the ones I don't pronounce right? Lichfield. I don't know how else I could pronounce that. Lichfield, I guess. And when at Oxford wrote the following letter. Wet my whistle before this letter. To the Reverend Mr. Thomas Wharton. Dear Sir, many years ago, when I used to read in the library at your college, I promised to recompense the college for that permission by adding to their books a Bakersfield Virgil. I have now sent it and desire you to deposit it on the shelves in my name. If you will be pleased to let me know when you have an hour of leisure, I will drink tea with you. I am engaged for the afternoon tomorrow and on Friday. All my mornings are my own. I am, and etc., May 31st, 1769, St. Johnson. 2 footnotes here for such a short letter. Number 1, when he talks about putting the book in his own name, Boswell adds in a footnote, it has this inscription in a blank leaf. Hunc librum Didi Samuel Johnson, eu quod hic loci studiis interdum vacaret, which translates, of course, as the gift of Samuel Johnson, who was occasionally at leisure to study here. Of this library, which is an old Gothic room, he was very fond. On my observing to him that some of the modern libraries of the university were more commodious and pleasant for study, as being more spacious and airy, Johnson replied, "Sir, if a man has a mind to prance, he must study at Christ Church and All Souls." And the next footnote is about how Johnson has his mornings to his own. During this visit, he seldom or never dined out. He appeared to be deeply engaged in some literary work. Miss Williams was now with him at Oxford. Anyway, that's the end of the footnotes on this page. I came to London in the autumn, and having informed Johnson that I was going to be married in a few months, I wished to have as much of his conversation as I could before engaging in a state of life which would probably keep me more in Scotland, and prevent my seeing him so often as when I was a single man. I guess that's not the case, because there's still about a billion more pages of this book, so I think he's probably going to see Johnson again. Anyway, but I found he was at Brighthelmstone with Mr. and Mrs. Thrale. I was very sorry that I had not his company with me at the Jubilee in honor of Shakespeare at Stratford-upon-Avon, the great poet's native town. Johnson's connection both with Shakespeare and Garrick founded a double claim to his presence, and it would have been highly gratifying to Mr. Garrick. Upon this occasion I particularly lamented that he had not that warmth of friendship for his brilliant pupil, which we may suppose would have had a beneficent effect on both. When almost every man of experience, or eminence rather, in the literary world was happy to partake in this festival of genius, the absence of Johnson could not but be wondered at and regretted. The only trace of him there was in the whimsical advertisement of a haberdasher who sold Shakespearean ribalds of various dyes, and, by way of illustrating their appropriation to the bard, introduced a line from the celebrated prologue at the opening of Drury Lane Theatre. Every change of many-colored life he drew. From Brighthelmstone, Dr. Johnson wrote me the following letter, which they who may think that I ought to have suppressed must have less ardent feelings than I have always avowed. Very long footnote here before this letter. In the preface to my account of Corsica, published in 1768, I thus express myself. He who publishes a book affecting not to be an author and professing an indifference for literary fame may possibly impose upon many people such an idea of his consequence as he wishes may be received. For my part, I should be proud to be known as an author, and I have an ardent ambition for literary fame. For, of all possessions, I should imagine literary fame to be the most valuable. A man who has been able to furnish a book which has been approved by the world has established himself as a respectable character in a distant society, without any danger of having that character lessened by the observation of his weaknesses. To preserve a uniform dignity among those who see us every day is hardly possible, and to aim at it must put us under the fetters of perpetual restraint. The author of an improved book may allow his natural disposition and easy play, and yet indulge the pride of superior genius, when he considers that by those who know him only as an author, he never ceases to be respected. Such an author, when in his hours of gloom and discontent, may have the consolation to think that his writings are, all this at that very time, giving pleasure to numbers, and such an author may cherish the hopes of being remembered after death, which has been a great object to the noblest minds in all ages. So that's the footnote. Now the letter. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, why do you charge me with unkindness? I have omitted nothing that could do you good or give you pleasure, unless it be that I have forbone to tell you my opinion of your account of Corsica. I believe my opinion, if you think well of my judgment, might have given you pleasure, but when it is considered how much vanity is excited by praise, I am not sure that it would have done you good. Your history is like other histories, but your journal is in a very high degree curious and delightful. There is between the history and the journal that difference which there will always be found between notions borrowed from without and notions generated within. Your history was copied from books. Your journal rose out of your own experience and observation. You express images which operated strongly upon yourself, and you have impressed them with great force upon your readers. I know not whether I could name any narrative by which curiosity is better excited or better gratified. I am glad that you are going to be married, and as I wish you well in things of less importance, wish you well with proportionate ardor in this crisis of your life. What I can contribute to your happiness, I should be very unwilling to withhold, for I have always loved you and valued you, and shall love you and value you still more, as you become more regular and useful, effects which a happy marriage will hardly fail to produce. I did not find that I am likely to come back very soon from this place. I shall perhaps stay a fortnight longer, and a fortnight is a long time to a lover absent from his mistress. Would a fortnight ever have an end? I am, dear sir, your most affectionate humble servant, Brightonstone, September 9th, 1769, Sam Johnson. Well, he doesn't pull any punches. Seems like a good friend, though. He tells it like it is. After his return to town, we met frequently, and I continued the practice of making notes of his conversation, though not without so much assiduity as I wish I had done. At this time, indeed, I had sufficient excuse for not being able to appropriate so much time to my journal, for General Paoli, after Corsica had been overpowered by the monarchy of France, was now no longer at the head of his brave countrymen, but having with difficulty escaped from his native island, had sought an asylum in Great Britain, and it was my duty as well as my pleasure to attend much upon him. Such particulars of Johnson's conversation at this period as I have committed to writing I shall here introduce without any strict attention to methodical arrangement. Sometimes short notes of different days shall be blended together, and sometimes the day may seem important enough to be separately distinguished. He said he would not have Sunday kept with rigid severity and gloom, but with a gravity and simplicity of behavior. I told him that David Hume had made a short collection of Scotticisms. The first edition of Hume's History of England was full of Scotticisms, many of which he corrected in subsequent editions. I wonder, said Johnson, that he should find them. Johnson would not admit the importance of the question concerning the legality of general warrants. Such a power, he observed, must be vested in every government to answer particular cases of necessity, and there can be no just complaint but when it is abused, for which those who administer government must be answerable. It is a matter of such indifference, a matter about which the people care so very little, that were a man to be sent over Britain to offer them an exemption from it at a halfpenny apiece, very few would purchase it. This was a specimen of that laxity of talking which I have heard him fairly acknowledge, for surely, while the power of granting general warrants was supposed to be legal, and the apprehension of them hung over our heads, we did not possess the security of freedom congenial to our happy constitution, in which by the intrepid exertions of Mr. Wilkes has been happily established. No idea what they're talking about here. No, this is some British history I don't understand. Maybe I'll look it up later if I get time. Johnson said, "The duration of Parliament, whether for several years or for the life of the king, appears to me so immaterial that I would not give half a crown to turn the scale one way or the other. The habeas corpus and the single advantage is the single advantage which our government has that you ever tell I start out fine, but then when I'm getting near the end I kind of screw up. Okay. Let's try this again. The habeas corpus is the single advantage which our government has over that of other countries. On the 30th of September, we dined together at the Mitre. I attempted to argue for the superior happiness of the savage life upon the usual fanciful topics. Johnson said, "Sir, there can be nothing more false. The savages have no bodily advantages beyond those of civilized men. They have not better health, and as to care or mental uneasiness, they are not above it, but below it like bears. No, sir, you're not to talk of such paradox. Let me have no more of it. It cannot entertain, far less can it instruct. Lord Monbonno, one of your Scotch judges, talked a great deal of such nonsense. I suffered him, but I will not suffer you." I said, "But, sir, does not Rousseau talk such nonsense?" Johnson answered, "True, sir, but Rousseau knows he is talking nonsense, and laughs at the world for staring at him." I said, "How so, sir?" Johnson answered, "Why, sir, a man who talks nonsense so well must know that he is talking nonsense. But I am afraid," chuckling and laughing, "ha ha ha, Monbonno does not know that he is talking nonsense." Footnote here. His lordship having frequently spoken in an abusive manner of Dr. Johnson in my company, I, on one occasion, during the lifetime of my illustrious friend, could not refrain from retaliation, and repeated to him this saying. He has since published I don't know how many pages in one of his curious books attempting, in much anger, but with pitiful effect, to persuade mankind that my illustrious friend was not the great and good man which they esteemed and ever will esteem him to be. Anyway, I said to Johnson next, "Is it wrong, then, sir, to affect singularity in order to make people stare?" Johnson said, "Yes, if you do it by propagating error, and indeed it is wrong in any way. There is in human nature a general inclination to make people stare, and every wise man has himself the cure of it, and does cure himself. If you wish to make people stare by doing better than others, why, make them stare till they stare their eyes out. But consider how easy it is to make people stare by being absurd. I may do it by going into a drawing room without my shoes. You remember the gentleman in The Spectator, who had a commission of lunacy taken out against him for his extreme singularity, such as never wearing a wig, but a nightcap? Now, sir, abstractedly, the nightcap was best, but relatively, the advantage was overbalanced by his making the boys run after him." Talking of London life, he said, "The happiness of London is not to be conceived but by those who have been in it. I will venture to say that there is more learning and science within the circumference of 10 miles from where we now sit than in all the rest of the kingdom." I said, "The only disadvantage is the great distance at which people live from one another." Johnson said, "Yes, sir, but that is occasioned by the largeness of it, which is the cause of all the other advantages." I said, "Sometimes I had been in the humor of wishing to retire to a desert." Johnson said, "I have been, sir, you have desert enough in Scotland." Ooh, I screwed that line up. That was a good zinger, too, and I fucked it up. Alright, well, I'm going to stop while I'm semi-coherent still. Till next time, bye from Boswell.